This atheist college student tries to debunk Frank Turk on if the Bible is reliable or not. So let's get right into the video and make sure to watch till the end because I have a Bible verse that will tie all of this together. Let's get right into it.
Just wanted to, thank you for giving this talk. I mean, actually, Eric was the one that, gave me this card, so I just wrote, a few notes on this.
Yes, sir. What's your name?
Thomas.
Thomas, go ahead.
Yeah. So, I had a few comments on your thing. So, I guess your first, jump from, God to Jesus was embarrassing moments throughout it. And the two examples you use, I know you said, you had, more of them, but with, Satan and women. So, I think you're drawing, on the premise that, either the New Testament has to be all entirely true or all entirely false. I think some things could happen that, are considered true and some are false. I mean, in the resurrection, two different accounts give two different times, which are irreconcilable. One said he wrote...
Okay, hold on, Thomas. I really kind of need a question.
Okay, yeah.
What's the question you're getting to?
For Satan... when Jesus calls Peter Satan, the first gospel was written in 74. And so,
whoa.
Okay, sorry. Sorry, this is a little long. Couldn't for the embarrassing things, they were just written in. If let's say Peter, I think he was martyred before most of these were I think before even the first gospel was written.
Okay, hold on, Thomas. Hold on. Okay. Anything's possible. You're right. Anything's possible. The question is what's reasonable. Okay?
Yeah.
First of all, I'm of the opinion, and many scholars are of the opinion, that almost all of the books of the New Testament are written prior to 70 AD. And there's a number of reasons for that. One of the biggest reasons is that one of the biggest events in Jewish history occurred in 70 AD, the destruction of the temple. Jesus predicts it, but nobody says, look, Jesus was right. Not only that, they write as if the temple is still standing when they're writing. Even John does, who is thought to be written after about 90 AD. But he writes as if the Pool of Bethesda is still in existence when he's writing.
Wasn't that the only one that predicted the temple?
What's that?
Wasn't John the only one that predicted the temple?
No, I'm talking about the Pool of Bethesda now. No, it wasn't. It's in Matthew, the Olivet Discourse. In fact, there's an Olivet Discourse in Luke as well, and even one in Mark. These are called the Synoptic Gospels, okay? Mark is probably the first gospel. And I could go through the dating right now, but we know Acts is written by 62 for a number of reasons. If Acts is written by 62, Luke is prior to Acts because Luke wrote both of those. And so Luke is prior then to Acts, and it appears that Paul is actually quoting from Luke in 1 Corinthians. And 1 Corinthians we know was written in about 55 AD, so Luke is probably 53 AD. And Mark is thought to be even prior to Luke. So we're talking very early. But even if they are written later than that, the issue isn't when the books were written. The issue is how good are the sources that the authors use to write the books. Like, for example, you right now, Thomas, could write a very accurate book about the Vietnam War, even though you didn't live then. If you had enough Vietnam vets to ask what happened, and you took their sources and put them into your book, you would have eyewitness testimony, even though you're writing it 50 years after the event.
That's so good. And what he's getting at is the Bible reliable? And the answer is yes, it is reliable for so many different reasons. Especially the New Testament, when it was written, they would have wrote about the destruction of the temple, saying Jesus fulfilled the law. Of course, that would have been this crazy thing, but they don't write about it because it was probably before. That means it was very early on during the time. And what he's getting at is of course, it's still reliable if someone writes about the Vietnam War, even though it was 50 years ago, if you interviewed all these people who were in that time, just like Luke could have done during Jesus' time. He could have interviewed people who witnessed Jesus and experienced Jesus and all the things that they've done. So let's continue to watch.
Okay, well, I think that I think we consider at least two of the gospel authors anonymous, so we wouldn't even know what sources that they necessarily
The best evidence we have from Papias, who's an early church father, and others, is that Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John wrote Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And if you were making up authors, you wouldn't pick those guys. You certainly wouldn't pick Luke, and you certainly wouldn't pick Mark, because they're not eyewitnesses. You would probably pick Peter, wouldn't you? And you would probably pick Thomas, or you would pick someone that had a name who is an apostle. Those people weren't picked because they didn't write the books. Luke did, and Mark did, and Matthew was an eyewitness, and so is John. So this is not what you would expect if they were going to later put a name on the book. They wouldn't put those names on the book. You know, later in the 2nd century, there were forgeries called the Gospel of Peter, the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Judas, the Gospel of Mary Magdalene. Why were those names on those 100 years after the events? Because the people that wrote those forgeries knew those names carried authority. So they put those names on the book to try and get the Christians to say, oh, this must have been written by Peter, when Peter had been dead for 100 years. There was no way it could have been Peter. So
I think for that, I think back then people used to attribute works to different people. In the Republic, I think, the author, he just kind of brings in, I think it was Plato or something like that. So where they'll if it's someone reputable or something, they can just say it, and that was more of a common practice. So I think that's what could have happened to the other.
Hey, anything's possible. The question is, what's reasonable? What is the best evidence that we have? That's the question. Now, if Christianity were true, would you become a Christian?
I mean, yes. If atheism was true, would you become an atheist?
Sure. The problem is, if atheism's true, there's no way of knowing it's true. Because if we're just molecular machines, I can't trust anything, I think.
Well, I'd say even for that case, there could be an evil God that just tricks you into thinking that there's Christianity. You can't prove anything with 100%. I mean, there are a few things that you can basically get to 100%. Mm-hmm. But, if let's say, you're just a brain in a vat being messed with, you can't necessarily disprove.
You're absolutely right. We can't disprove we're in the Matrix right now.
Yeah.
Because we'd have to get outside the Matrix to know that. But you know why we're not in the Matrix? Because it's stupid. Okay? But Thomas, if I gave you a book, would you read it?
Sure. I mean, is there a deadline?
No.
I don't know. It's during midterms right now, so no process.
After midterms. Hey, Doubting Thomas. Hey, Thomas, how about if we say over the Christmas break?
And that's so good. I think the Gospels are definitely reliable and credible, and we can trust and rely that these things are written and applied down, and we can rely on them to be true. There's so many reasons why other books that were written close to those times, a little bit after, were not put in the Bible because they were forgeries. They were actually not written by those people, or they completely contradicted each other. Not because, it wasn't during that time, or because they lied, or because it actually happened. No, it's because that those people who were there would have been able to say those things didn't happen. And I think that's so good. And now I have a Bible verse for you all today. Matthew 24 verse 15 says, "So when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by the prophet Daniel standing in the holy place, let the reader understand. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountain." A lot of times, a lot of people are thinking that was talking about 70 AD when it got destroyed during that time, which is just crazy. When Rome completely destroyed the temple, and that's crazy. And all that happened in 70 AD, and no one wrote about it in the Bible. Therefore, these things probably were written before the temple was destroyed. And I want to know what you would have said to this person, or if you think the Bible's not true. Please comment down below. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. Please comment down below and subscribe if you haven't, and you might like this video here. Peace.